Are ghosts real? Several recent encounters suggest there might be more things in heaven and earth than we can dream of.
So are werewolves just a Hollywood creation, or do half-man, half-wolf creatures really exist? Now, tonight, we kick off our Conspiracy Theory Month series, which was
The legend of the vampire actually goes back for centuries, and it exists in some form or another in almost every culture. In fact, some people believe the first vampire story was in the Bible.
Well, for decades, only crackpots and crazy people believed in UFOs. That's what I thought anyway. And then in recent years, it turns out that governments have been taking them seriously all along.
Try and clear up an ancient mystery with the help of a prominent veterinarian who says she can prove that Bigfoot exists and that he's related to all of us.
New reports, 5 pilots coming forward over the weekend saying they've had multiple mid-air encounters with high-flying, fast-moving objects.
And good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for tuning in to Season 4, Episode 9 of the hit underground paranormal and radio show known as Celestial Oddities P.O.N.G, Pair of Normal Guys podcast. As always, I will be your host, Frater Crow.
And I'm your co-host, Daniel James.
And we would like to thank you for tuning in tonight. Whether you're listening live, you're streaming after the fact, or you've downloaded us to your device for on the go, we ask one thing. Click the like, share, follow, and subscribe buttons on whatever platform you're tuning in from, whether it be Instagram, Facebook, or YouTube. Helps us move up the podcast community rankings, allows more people to discover the show, keeps you in the loop with new episodes as they air, and gives you unfiltered access to all of our past archives, not only of Celestial Oddities P.O.N.G, which 4 seasons now, but also Knights of the Nephilim 4 seasons, and 2 very long and extended seasons of Uncovering the Underground. Roughly 200 episodes, several hundred hours of underground entertainment, interviews, deep discussions, and thought-provoking content. So make sure you check it out, share it to your friends and family, get the word out there. We would really appreciate it. If you've missed any of the episodes this season so far of Celestial Oddities, jump back. We've covered some great topics, had some great guests on the show, and tonight certainly will be no different. We have Michael Bowser, aka Mikey B from Bumpin' the Night Society, a very prominent and well-known paranormal research and investigation group here in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. They have been a mixture of vendors, special guests, and hosts at some of the largest paranormal conventions in this half of the country, from the middle section to the East Coast. They've been all over the place. They have a very explosive TikTok. They've won awards for having one of the best TikToks in Pennsylvania. They have been on the news. They have released multiple documentaries. They have done quite a bit, and they're getting their name out there. On top of all those wonderful accolades, I've known Mike since we were children. We grew up together and been close friends for a very long time. So it'll be great to get him on tonight, pick his brain, talk about what they do as a group, their documentaries, and then jump into the meat of it, guys, as you all love, which is asking questions about metaphysical topics and throwing thought-provoking ideas out there and see what Mike's thoughts are on those ideas. So, Dan, we're back for another great one.
All right, man, let's do it. Bring him in.
Absolutely. So without further ado, folks, let's bring on Mikey B.
Well, thanks, gentlemen. I appreciate the intro there. I feel like it was a little better than what I actually am, so I do appreciate that. But yeah, Frater and I have been friends for a very long time. I want to say that him and I shared a very interesting experience when we were in a band together, and that was the first paranormal experience that I do remember. Not saying that I didn't have paranormal experiences earlier, but Frater kind of got me back into the paranormal realm and investigating, and I do appreciate that.
No, it's been a long road, buddy, and it's been kind of interesting. I mean, for the folks out there, some of you have heard my perspective on the story, and I would love to hear Mike's. One of the questions I would have asked you, and can still ask you, is
sure,
where you started out or what got you into the paranormal. Now, ours has been kind of twofold, because I know we had a very prominent and profound experience many, many years ago, and then many years later, kind of brought you back into the fold of paranormal research and investigation with our old group. And then it's led to you making documentaries, led to you just kind of being all over the place, doing a lot of different interviews and great things, being a co-host of your own show. So it's pretty awesome, seeing the growth and seeing what is, turned into. So if you don't mind, for the, folks listening out there, how did your journey into the paranormal, into the supernatural begin?
Well, I would say even prior to our experience, I was always into going into places like cemeteries and different supposedly haunted places with urban legends and whatnot. Not as an investigator, but just kind of as an observer. I remember one time when I was very young, my father lived really close to a cemetery, the one really close to where we grew up in Katanning. And I remember going in there and I would just look at the headstones, and I asked him, Dad, why are all these headstones? It seems like all these people died at, the early 1900s, and it would be families and little kids. And that was when there was the flu epidemic in the early 1900s. And it just kind of got me interested in learning more of the history. And then also there's also Civil War tombstones there. And I just, you see all this history going to these places, and it just really intrigued me. And I feel like with paranormal investigating, we kind of enhance that history and get to tell these people's stories that, people may not know about. But then that expanded, of course, to our situation that we had. I was probably 18 and you were like 16, I think.
Somewhere in that ballpark, or 17 and 15. It was somewhere right around that age.
Yeah. And we were in a hardcore band together. I was the vocalist. Frater was a guitarist, and we were with our other guitarist. And I don't know if you want me to deep dive into that story, because I know you've said it on the show before.
No, I mean, you can feel free to give some highlights of what your experience was. I would love to see from your place of pivot, your perception, how it all kind of went down.
Yeah, I actually forgot about that whole instance. And then when you came over to my house during the pandemic and you were talking about it, I was like, it just hit me. It just came back. It was almost like I blocked that out of my mind. But we were going to a place that's we'll just call it Hell's Gates Cemetery. I didn't really know too much going into it. And I parked under this tree, which, Frater later told us that there's supposedly a portal to hell above the tree. And so I parked under there, and Frater was like, let's do a ritual. And I was like, all right. I mean, I didn't believe in anything at the time. I was as an atheist. I didn't really believe that there was anything with the afterlife. And so I was like, we're in a metal band. We're in a hardcore band. Like, yeah, let's do it. So, we performed the ritual, the three of us. I won't dive into the details. It was a very intense thing. And from what I remember it was a very large cemetery. And I remember after we were done with the ritual, a roar coming, and it roared here and then wrapped around the entire cemetery. And it wasn't multiple roars, like there were multiple entities surrounding us. It was one single roar, and it just wrapped around. And then I kind of remember losing track of time and not really remembering anything after the roar until I don't know how much time elapsed at that point, but Frater and I were walking through the cemetery, and I was just like, where's our friend? And we didn't know where he was. So we're looking around, for a couple minutes trying to find him. And one of us said, hey, let's go back to the car and see if he went back to the car and is waiting for us. So we're walking back to the car, and we can kind of see in the back seat of my car a shadowy silhouette of a human, in the back seat. So we're, approaching it, and we're like, there he is. What the hell is he doing? So we open the door, and we're like, hey, man, get out of the car. And he's not responding. We're like, come on, dude, get out of the car. So we literally pull him out of the car, and he's not responding. So we kind of shake him, and that's when his head comes down like this, and his pupils are just dilated like completely dilated. And we're shaking him like, what the hell? And then Frater ends up smacking him in the face. And he comes to kind of out of it. I don't remember if he was crying or not, but he's like, we need to get the F out of here. We need to get the F out of here right now. And I'm like, hell yeah, man, let's go. And we got in my car and left. But that was my perspective, at least from what I remember. Do you recall anything happening during the time that elapsed, or was it the same for you where you kind of just came to after the roar?
I remember it all pretty clearly. I think what you experience, what a lot of people experience when they have very overwhelmingly powerful paranormal experiences, is cognitive dissonance, where it can disappear. I had this happen not only in your example, as you said, you forgot it. Other people who have had experiences that I've been with have blocked them out. And then once I was talking to them, they remembered again. And there was one specifically where the gentleman didn't remember. And it was the story that some of the listeners out there will remember, where I found the ghost town, which is one of the weirder stories out there. And I had reached back out to that buddy years later after I had that dream. And I hadn't really talked to him in years and said, hey, do you remember when we found that town? Something so changing that you're not gonna get it. And he's like, I don't know what you're talking about. And I said, that time in the woods, bro, where we found a town and me and you were kind of weird and we didn't want to go down to it. Normally we'd be all about it. Something kept us away. It was very strange. We went looking for it again afterwards and couldn't find it. And he's like, dude, I don't know what you're talking about. That never happened. And it was just strange to me. I'm like, but I know for a fact it happened. So it was like, okay. But I've run into that time and time again where there's either a spacing of time, which can happen in encounters, but where it almost is just blocked away. But no, you nailed it. I mean, we did a ritual, and there was some type of opening of a doorway. There was something that came through it, made its presence known. It was a very shocking revelation of experiencing this. And our friend was taken over by something. And, I think that it's always kind of stuck with him. He already had his own troubles in life, but I think that certainly amplified that and has changed the trajectory of his life. But at the same time, people always say, well, don't you feel bad about that? I mean, yes and no. I feel bad that it happened. I don't feel guilty of it happening because everyone agreed. You know what I mean? It's like if y'all agree to go fucking bungee jumping and the cord breaks on one of you, it sucks. But I mean, I don't feel guilty if I'm the one that suggested it. You don't have to go. So it was interesting. I do remember him, being completely out of it, very large, pupils, almost what I call locus-eyed, like when you're tripping on LSD or psilocybin or something where you have, that's what it looked like. And then when I did smack him, they came to, yes, he had a freak out. He was crying, wanted out of there. And it was interesting. And like I said, that same spot, I've had encounters with other possessions that have happened, since then. But it's been a while since I've been back. I do look forward to making a journey there again. No question. Hopefully this summer. I know we did talk about this, so we might make a return after, 15, 16, 18 years, whatever the fuck it's been.
Yeah.
A question I would ask, Mike, is, do you think when we open a portal, do we physically open a portal external to ourselves, or are we opening the ability of a doorway within ourselves? So with us doing it that night, did it really open a physical doorway at this cemetery that we call Hell's Gates, or did it open the ability within our minds that things could come from the collective unconscious and seep through into our visual cortex or our physical world, and we experienced them that way? So was it us, or did it just come through? What is your thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, that kind of coincides with one of the hypotheses that I have with what we're interacting with in general. I feel that we're not even on investigations, we're not necessarily interacting with the spirits or of dead people or daemons or demons, but we could possibly just be interacting with the energy of a location, and it's personifying itself in a way that, okay, we heard this story and we manifest our own thoughts based on what people have gotten at a location prior to. And I think that the energy is always there. So in this case, that portal was there. It was already open. And like you're saying, like, I think the ritual maybe not necessarily opened a portal within, but at least doing that ritual made us kind of believe that we're going to be open to seeing things, if that makes sense. It's more of just having we always have the ability to see, and that portal's always there within. It's just when we do a ritual or we go on an investigation, we're more inclined to have interactions like that just because we are open to it rather than, physically opening a portal at a location. I think that energy's there regardless.
Well, and that's one other thing, and I'll let Dan jump in. Is that was one of the questions I was going to ask you tonight. Do you think that paranormal phenomena and supernatural phenomena, do you believe that it's only happening when we are hearing and experiencing that phenomena in a location we go to? Or, and let me use an example here, is it like radio waves? Right now, we're sitting here, AC/DC and Taylor Swift and the Beastie Boys and the Ramones and all these other bands, I'm just pulling them out of a hat
Yeah,
right now, are playing around our head right now on radio stations all over the world. And they're floating around us, literally physically in each one of our rooms right now, but we don't hear it. It's only when you turn on that device, that receiver, that it picks up that frequency. And then we then hear what we perceive to be as music. And oh, there it is. It's playing right to my box in my room. Well, I almost look at the paranormal very similar, that if I didn't tell you this house was haunted and that there's activity here, there's a good chance that you're going to miss 99% of the stuff that's happening. But when I tell you you're in a haunted location and you're paying attention to it now, you're changing a little bit of your consciousness and frequency to pay attention, and you're more open to it. All of a sudden you're experiencing, I heard the whistle, and other people, I heard it too, because now the minds have tuned in to what was already happening. The whistling is always happening. The knocking is always happening. Them walking around is always happening. It doesn't just occur in those moments that were there that one time a night. Okay, well, 10:40, it knocked. That's all we experienced all weekend. Well, no, it was probably doing shit the entire time you were there, but for some reason or another, that's when it was at its strongest and most perceivable to the physical mind. But it's been doing things the whole time, living in its own plane of existence around us. We just don't necessarily perceive it. What are your thoughts on that?
No, I agree 100%. I think that there is energy everywhere. I think that energy is constantly interacting, whether it's, paranormal energy or just a general energy. And I think that it's more the energy that you bring as well to a location. Even if it's not a haunted location, there's still stuff going on. Energy still travels through there. So I think that it is a matter of perception. I mean, I think all of life is a matter of perception. And I feel that when you're looking for it and you're more in tune to, or more open to seeing it, I think that, you'll find it, whether it's at a haunted location, or if it's, driving down the road and you look over and you see some kind of figure that, nobody else sees. I think that energy is always happening regardless of a place being quote unquote haunted. And I think it's more just your perception and your openness to and willingness. And also energy has to show itself. There is a situation where it may be closed off as well. So I think it's our end. We have to be open, as well as, their end, or the energy's end has to want to present itself to you. But it doesn't have to be a haunted location. I think there's currents and flows and, like you said, airwaves that are going through everywhere, if that makes sense.
No, I think it does. I think it's like, like I've always given the analogy of a spark to the fuel. I mean, there's natural currents all over the place. There's energy all around us. And we, by tuning our minds to that frequency or being receptive at that time, or in certain circumstances, just by chance, like you said, you're driving down the road, you look over and there's a cryptid running through the woods. You're like, holy shit, what's happened? I wasn't expecting anything. I wasn't in any different mind state. Sometimes it does happen kind of unexpectedly, but most of the time it's you adding that spark to a combustible source. That gasoline isn't going to burn anything sitting in a canister, no matter how long you let it sit there. But the first time you bring a flame to it, you best believe it's going to ignite, it's going to be explosive, and it's going to cause light. And that ethereal light's what we're experiencing, especially when you have, and I've said it before, you take 5 non-believers, you have 5 skeptics and take them to a location. Most of the time they walk away still a skeptic at the end and rarely change their mind and rarely experience anything. But you take 5 people very open, very prone to experiences that believe heavily, and put them in a haunted location and say, this place has this and this and this happen. They walk away with stories. Is it a fabrication of mind, or is it just being more receptive, or is it a little bit of both, that we unravel our mind and our mind is the spark to the currents of energy, creating before us phantasmagorical shows? Because as you said, how many times has someone been in a location that you've never heard a name prior to that, but that person has a tie with an individual, they leave and we're the group that comes afterwards, and all of a sudden now you're experiencing the relative of so-and-so that was here, or a spirit that follows that person around, or something connected to that person. So it's like, well, okay, this house never had Steve in it before, but Frater Crow was here, and Frater Crow always has Steve come through his spirit box and always attached to him. And now we're hearing Steve. Did Steve then jump ship from me and stay there? Or is everywhere we go leaving a metaphysical condensation behind that can be taken as paranormal phenomena? I look at it like a bathtub, clean water. You get in it and you're dirty and you get out. It's still bath water, but now you've chemically changed the water because you left behind a residue of yourself there. What you've encountered in that day, what you've experienced, all of that is now left into the water. Now you two climb in and get out. The water keeps changing. It's still the bath water, but each and every time we're leaving something behind in that natural, paranormal, metaphysical current that sits behind. And when that next spark comes along and it combusts, it gives us this light show of all of the different contact with. So it's very much alive, but it very much can sit dormant until that spark ignites it. And when it does, it shows us that that stage show of everybody it's come into contact with. That is only my thought belief, folks, but that's kind of how I've always interpreted it.
Yeah, and that's why going on the experiment I told you about, it kind of coincides with that in a way. So Dan, I'm doing this experiment. I missed a lot of days. It's really hard, but my goal is every day that I can. I'm obviously not at my house every day, and sometimes I ADD out and forget about it. But at 10 o'clock every night, I go into the corner over there and I say the same thing and I track it. And I take a video of it too. And I'm saying the same thing, and I'm going to do this for an entire year. And then the following year, I'm going to take a digital voice recorder at the same time, put it over there. I'm obviously going to videotape it, so no one, thinks I'm just going up and saying the word to the digital voice recorder. And I'm just trying to see if I can create an energy imprint where I will be able to hear that word come through the digital voice recorder at that location. But then I was talking to one of my coworkers the other day, and she said, well, why don't you try to interact with it? If you get success, why don't you try to interact with it? And so I think the next step will be, and I know, devices, everybody has their own opinions. I know they're not foolproof. And obviously, it could be energy just mimicking me, not necessarily, I'm creating that energy. But I'm thinking that the next step would be to get a spirit box and see if I can interact with that. See if the same thing will happen. If it happened with the digital voice recorder, will it happen with a spirit box? And then if I can get it through the spirit box, can I make it intelligent? Am I able to interact with myself and essentially, I guess, haunt myself in a way?
That's pretty fascinating. And I'd like to offer you a perspective of sort of the way I see reality creation in a way that might sort of throw some flair on your exercise, your practice that you're doing, because it is really cool. I like to interpret reality in the sense that we are creating it, and that time actually exists in the now moment only. So there wouldn't be like a past, present, or future, but rather only the now. And so, if you think about reality in terms of cause and effect, the way that we're sort of using it for the sake of your exercise, which I think is really cool, um, then we could linearize the way that your imprints work. That your exercise that you're doing would have a linear effect, but only from the perspective that we are linearizing it ourselves, if that's a word. We're making it linear from our own perspective of the now. So, one thing you could do in your protocol is uh, instead of trying to create like an imprint or an overlap, instead look at it like every time you do this exercise, your intention, your creational energy as a creator of your own reality, your intention is to create sort of, in a sense, like this pocket universe, this pocket realm where
Mhm.
time itself almost is isolated, and you are almost like fractalizing a little version of yourself and projecting that version of your own consciousness into this sort of pocket universe, where uh, did you say are you saying a certain phrase, or what are you
Yeah.
saying when you okay, you don't have to say what that is. I just wanted to
I'll say it.
clarify.
I just watched Mario Brothers with my son not too long ago, so I just
Cool.
do the "Mamma Mia" 3
Okay,
times.
perfect. That's great. No,
I figured
that's
it was
good.
unique. It had to be something unique, and that was kind of easy to say.
It's intentional, and that's my point. My whole point is like the intention behind the creational process, or the intention behind the exercise, which I'm a big fan of. So, if you could maybe when you do your exercise, imagine if each time you're doing it, you're creating not only the experience in the exercise, but also whatever the outcome is. So be clear on what type of outcome you'd prefer to see happen. Imagine in your imagination, envision like what do I hope to see in terms of a result, or what would be cool evidence that I could use in some sort of way that's relevant by the time I'm done with this exercise. And that way that you're not so much, say, for example, trying to use time and overlap time in this pocket universe and imprint something with the repetition, but rather you're saying, okay, well, as creator, here is my goal. I want to see if I can achieve this thing by the intention of the repetition and my energy driven to this particular exercise. So that was one little like perspective, the way I see my whole life, my
Yeah.
whole reality, whether it's like my business or relationships or my work or in my endeavor, is understanding that I'm creator driving the wheel. And what would I like to see happen as a result of my energy input of this exercise that I'm doing? So awesome that you're doing that. And I hope that, in a year or two that you can tell us what your results are.
Yeah, yeah. And I like that perspective too, because not only are you just doing the imprint, but you're almost manifesting the results
Exactly.
within your head, which could manifest into reality.
Yeah, you're not
Exactly.
leaving it up for as much chance because you're saying the Mamma Mia, you're focusing on it. You're focusing on you a year from now, hearing back that you sitting in your basement, you're playing the loop in your head. And the more you do it, same time, every day, keep it consistent, keep it, disciplined, then you're manifesting that, you're bringing to fruition that happening. Now, I guess a good question. Someone said, hopefully it doesn't backfire. I mean, that's the thing, Laura, is that even if it does, it's good data analysis because now you say, well, I tried this experiment every day for a year and it didn't work. I did it for a year and then for 6 months, every night I went and listened and never heard anything. Or I did only on Saturdays, or I did only when the moon was in Taurus, or whatever have you. You can start to break down these little spots of it and say, well, okay, why did it only happen on these days of the week or under this celestial body or under this moon phase? How does that play into our perception and understanding or our contact with the paranormal? Now, one of the things I would worry about, I wouldn't worry about it in the sense of being like alarmed, would be after that year of doing this every night, sitting in the basement, going quiet and waiting, anticipating and expecting to hear Mamma Mia back. When you do, Is it the echoes of the past playing in the present? Or once again, are you opening your doorway of your mind and sending out a signal into the ethereal void, coming back, echoing, and it's actually not you from the past work, it's actually you in that very present moment manifesting your will right then and there. There's no way of knowing that. And
Yeah.
that's what it's a unfortunate, but also a very beautiful thing that it's magic nonetheless. Holy shit, this worked. How did it work? Was it me now or was it me a year ago? Was it the
One
first me that
thing
did it or the 20th me? I mean, it's hard to say.
One thing Frater and I discuss on the show quite often, I think it comes up probably more than any other subject, just because it's a real phenomenon, is the concept of egregores and how your intentional consciousness can, in a sense, manifest an entity outside of the self, even if it is an aspect of you.
Yeah.
But we talk about this in like the collective consciousness, where if a lot of people have an idea or a thought or a fear about a particular thing that maybe didn't exist empirically, like in terms of like reality, the way we understand it, but then it manifests in some way, it becomes real, and then it is a real entity outside of the self that people are like encountering, which I think that it's like the answer of a lot of paranormal phenomenon throughout history is like an egregor that manifests from people's collective fear. So I think I lightly touched on it last time I spoke about this to you, but basically you could almost be creating a fractal of yourself, like an egregore that now exists independently of you, that you could be interacting with.
Yeah.
Which is kind of cool.
Yeah, and I remember I listened to your last episode, and you touched on Slender Man.
Yeah.
And yeah, I 100% believe in that, and that's what I was touching on earlier too. When you go to these, quote unquote haunted locations, like, are you, like we'll say Bill in the basement at Hillview, are you really interacting with Bill, the maintenance man? Or not Bill, I'm sorry. George is in the basement.
George.
Are you really interacting with George? Or has there been so many people through there and they know the history that George was down there and they just keep interacting with George over and over again? And it just created that there was energy there, and that energy personifies itself as George. Because it doesn't make sense to me. What I always wanted to do too, and I'll tell you about here in a second, but it doesn't make sense to me that, okay, George didn't die at Hillview that I know of. I believe he just worked there. Why is after death that he's, present where he worked? Why does that happen? Why does it have to be after that person is deceased? Is it possible that they just had energy imprinted there and it was always there and, people just didn't know to look for it? Or is it that he actually died, his quote unquote soul or energy, whatever you believe in, left his body, and that energy that, what the heaven, hell, whatever, whatever you believe in, the main source of the energy, but then energy, also dispersed and just little fragments, were sent throughout the world. And for whatever reason, some of it congregated in that spot just because that was something that it was familiar with and that's where it was. But yeah, or is it just manifested because people knew that there was a maintenance man named George and so many people interacted there, so that energy just said, hey, I'm George?
I think my thing is anybody can come through at any location, and that's made this a couple of different times, and I'm not favored for it, was that not to get the history of a location because you like to know historically. Someone who likes history, I want to know what happened here, but you also don't want to know what happened here because you don't want to be manipulated into what you should expect to encounter. And the problem with that is someone could tell you a completely bogus story. Oh, this was the room of Michael, and Michael unfortunately died in an unfortunate fire that happened here in 1924 set by his roommate Bill. And they tell you this elaborate story that could be absolutely bogus. And now you start to have experiences with Bill and with, whoever got burned, and you start to get the words flame come through. That's what makes me think, okay, well, wait a second, that shit never happened. I could do this experiment. And when you're having this happen, then it's almost proving that the different members of the group or the people in that room are projecting thoughts out that somehow are echoing back as other voices, as other beings. So then you're like, well, wait a second, what is the reality? Now, that's one side of it. The other side is, why would someone after death go back to the place they worked? Well, that could happen anywhere, because once again, that same concept, you can tap into channels, and mediums aren't special, folks. They are in the sense that they are people who work hard to be very prominent at what they do and efficient at what they do. But what they do is something that each and every one of us could or can do if they sharpen their tool set. Everyone can learn to carve a statue from stone. Doesn't mean everybody's going to be great at it, but everyone could learn. But how many people actually pick up that art and pick up those tools to learn it? They don't. So, when we experience things, you're channeling through beings. The collective unconscious, to me, is something that everyone that ever has existed, that does exist, and anyone that ever will exist in this plane of existence, the stirring and echoes of those people will live on forever in a giant cloud that is like a demigod, and they can be tapped into. And that's what revenants and spirits of the dead are. We're fourfold. We drop our physical body. It rots, it dissipates into the ground. Our psyche, our egoic self, and our soul. Now, there's an argument between soul and spirit and soul. Let's not get into that. Soul and psyche stick around as echoes, a stir of echoes that remain here. And your spirit goes back to sender, and it gets pushed into another form, and it continues to go on. Energy never dies. But that's why you never really have that deep of an intellectual conversation with the spirit of the human dead. They might say their name. They might say things that allow you to know that it was your uncle, and you're like, holy shit, he knew something only my uncle would say. But you're not carrying on a full-blown conversation with them. Very rarely. They're only saying blips, because they are fractalized sleeves of what they were. The body dropped, this empty shell with some memories lingered around, and then the spirit went up. So one went down, one went up. This lingers for a while, sometimes longer than others. But they don't really know who they are. They don't know why they're there. That's why you constantly hear them crying and saying, help. That's why you constantly saying, where am I? Who's there? They don't know what's going on. They're just wandering lost. Some of them are more intelligent than others, but even the ones that are intelligent really don't know exactly what's going on. Through advanced necromancy and practices, you can tap into darker and deeper levels of these beings, but most of the time, they're just the ravenous side of these beings. They're the animalistic, egoic psyche of people that have come and gone. That's why they make perfect spirits to send to destroy people, because they're the animal side of human beings. I will feed you. I will give you drink. I will honor you and give you offerings. Go out and destroy my enemy. And it's just these spiritual currents that kind of have intelligence, but they're not smart enough usually in a lot of cases to think much beyond that. They're the sleeve of what once was. And that's what we encounter. That's why a lot of times you never really come away with much great answers. You just get a bunch of names. Where am I? Who are you? When did you die? And they will sometimes give you dates, but they don't give you much more than that, because they can't give you much more than that. They're just the stir of echoes.
It's almost like, in a sense, there's just enough of their energy left behind for the sake of our perception of them. The remnant of their existence is really just there for us, in a sense. But their consciousness, enough of their fractal is already gone on to the next phase, whatever it is for their journey, in a sense. What do you think, Mikey?
No, and that's kind of what I was saying, when the soul or whatever leaves the body, it just disperses energy. It's almost like a rocket shooting out, and the remnants that are left behind, is that what we're interacting with? And it's exactly what you're both saying. Is that's why it's fragmented. It's just because it's little pockets of energy here and there, and sometimes the current of energy can be stronger. And that's why you'll get, longer responses or, more conversation, is because that is a stronger energy. I also believe that, in the spirit realm or the, energy realm, that there's different planes, and depending on the power of the energy of, the spirit, if that's what you believe in, that spirit may be able to see multiple planes, while other ones are limited to just, their lower energy, and they're only seeing what's on their plane, or maybe just, 2 or 3 planes. And that's why a lot of times when we're investigating, we'll just say, just want to know how many entities are in the room with me right now. And you'll, turn a device on or whatever. It'll say, 8. It'll say 11. It'll say 2. And I don't think it's just random numbers. I think it's the energy coming through, and some of that energy is limited to just, the certain planes, and other ones can see, the more powerful beings can see all the planes. So I agree 100%. I think that's why it's fragmented. I know Frater and I, when we were at Darmine last time we investigated together, I think that was last time.
Yeah,
we were trying to ask questions, asking, "Are you able to see us? Are you able to hear us?" To try to get the energy's perspective, because is it fragmented for them? Is it? We're getting just blips here and there. Is that all they're getting? Are they able to see us fully, or are they just seeing us, partially, like we see them and get to interact with them?
Well, and if anybody's ever seen the movie The Platform, it's a horror movie. It's out there. It does a great job in the sense that there's different levels of these slaves stuck in this thing where they can talk to the people below them, but they're not allowed to speak to the people above them. And it works that way the whole way down, level after level after level. So you can treat the people like below you like shit, or talk to them and demand them and command them, but you can't say a word to the people above you. Why this is important is, as you mentioned, certain spirits, and it's an ancient belief that the planes above can talk with, work, and control and bind the planes below, but they can't interact and do that with the ones above. So they might not see the planes of above. Doesn't mean they can't tap into it, but they're not openly seeing it where they can openly see the ones below. Now, this brings us to a point in ceremonial magic and ritual, that you invoke an angel, you evoke a demon. Invoke is pulling down from your super consciousness, your higher self. You're pulling down this being inside of you, and to awaken inside of you and use you as a vessel to communicate internally. And you evoke, pulling up out of you and pushing out in front of you to connect and see and communicate with a being below you. It's why, in the old manuscripts and the old grimoires, they would say to bind and command the demon, because they come from the chthonic realms. They come from the lower realms below humanity. They come from the telluric realms, the earthbound realms. But we are kind of an intermediary between worlds. We are of the spirit, but we are of the flesh. Spirits are envious because they can't experience sensation. They can't experience the things that we do as humans, but also that can be our fault, and we cannot go beyond that. There's a heavy belief: are you Ahrimanic or Ahrimanic or Luciferic? Those are the opposite detriments to someone. Ahriman was the Persian devil, and if you are a very Ahrimanic being, you're focused so much on the physical, so much on the here and now and the material, that you never look to the heavens. You never think about spirit, and it's at your detriment. You're stuck here in this loop of reincarnation forever because you don't care about spirit. You're earthbound. Luciferic, to an extreme, is so much in the clouds, constantly thinking about spirit, and I want to escape this body, this materialism. I hate being here. That you never get shit done, and you never actually grow because your head's in the clouds. You have to find that middle pillar. You have to bring the two pillars of opposition together and understand that we are gods in the flesh, because we are both spirit and flesh. Being just flesh, being just substance or material, a rock, doesn't go anywhere. You're just a dead weight. Being just a spirit, you can do a lot of things, but they don't get to experience this world of manifestation. So I think that bringing them together really allows us to do things that no one else can, but we have to take advantage and use those faculties and sharpen it. And you can talk to the higher and lower, but they don't always see one another. And good luck on commanding an angel. You can get an angel and angelic forces to do things for you, but try to bind it. Try to bind it as a lower being, lesser than its level. Doesn't work. You can do that with chthonic beings. You can't do that with angelic beings. And that's why the lower can't trump the higher. Only the higher can trump the lower. There is a hierarchy. That's why there is legions of demons and hierarchies and kings and princes and principalities. That's why there is the different choirs of angels. This isn't just a way for us to organize. A lot of people say, oh, it's a way for us to organize and understand it as a human mind. It's like military. And no, there's a reason, because the higher always trumps the lower.
No, it makes sense for sure.
Someone said, did I hear a REM pod? I don't think so. I don't have a REM pod on. I don't think anybody else has a REM pod on.
Yeah, I don't have a REM pod on.
So either you manifested that, Laura, or it probably wasn't a REM pod. Some food.
Okay, I have a question, she says, Laura. So if they do not have sensations or no feelings, then can you explain how incubus and succubus have sensations and feeling, or do they not?
Well, they attach to you. They're parasitic. And incubi or succubi are merely spirits who found ways to suck their life juice and energy to thrive off of sexual interaction with human beings. And it doesn't work that succubus only like, the opposite sex. No, a succubus can like a man and a woman, and an incubus can like a man and a woman. It works both ways. They feed off the sexual energy. What is more potent, folks, than lust? There is nothing. People say love is more. No, like love's great. But when you really want to fuck someone, when you were like out of your mind in rapture of lust, there's no more powerful energy in the world than that. So when they can make you experience that when you're in the ethereal and astral realms while sleeping and tap into that, feed off it, you are giving the most fine cuisine that you could possibly give to these spirits. They feed off of your energy. But even people who practice vampiric magic will tell you that if you feed off of an individual's energy, I'm not saying drinking their blood. We're not fucking in horror movies. This isn't Bram Stoker. When you are feeding off their energy, and it's very real, folks, you can learn to drain people dry astrally that are around you. It's a beautiful practice, very, very predatory. And when you do that, you'll take on attributes of the people that you're drinking, because you're bringing in their energy. So that's what you have to understand. If you're drinking from someone that's extremely ill and sick, there's a good chance you're going to become ill and sick from it. Energy is everything. We think too much with the flesh. The flesh is nothing. It's weakness. It's fragile. It's only here as a vehicle to experience this world. We are truly spirit. Everything is spirit, but we're given flesh to experience it in a different capacity. Stop thinking with the flesh and understand that energy, when mixed with other energies, just like chemistry, you mix this chemical with that chemical, it makes something different. That's what happens when these spirits come into contact with us. That's why when you're possessed and it leaves, usually the person's not the same afterwards. Ask our buddy that Mike was talking about at the beginning of the show. He's never been the same, even though there's no longer an attachment to him, I don't believe, from that experience. He might certainly have attachments. Most people do. Big clue there, guys. Everybody has parasites on them. Not even talking physical. I'm talking astral parasites almost on everybody, unless you practice to get rid of them. They will leave residue on you. You will never be the same again, because they've now given you a piece of their energy. That's why I always say, be careful who you fuck, because of STDs. And people say, oh, sexually transmitted diseases. No, sexually transmitted demons. Everyone that you've ever slept with, you've taken a part of them with you, and they've taken a part of you with them, and neither of you will ever be the same. It goes beyond feelings. It goes beyond thoughts and emotions. It goes to a spiritual molecule, a ethereal level that you guys have mixed together, and now it's never going to be the same again. After you mix the two chemicals in a beaker, you can't separate them.
Damn, man, I made some bad decisions in college too. So
he's riddled with demons.
Yeah, all over, man. Just shooting demons.
Just shooting some demons out. So they put that feeling in our minds, so it makes us grow through these emotions. And once we are going through the emotions, they feed off of them, feeling. Well, of course, shadow beings. That's why me and Dan have talked about this extensively. Shadow beings. What's the one thing everybody says? I came into contact with a shadow being. What does it make you feel? You're fucking terrified. Even if you're not someone, and right now I'm like, I have no problem with them and I'm not scared of them. But when they show up, you're like, it's not even necessarily that you cognitively caused yourself to be afraid. They invoke the fear in you because as you're sitting there like you're throwing massive amounts of energy at them that they're just drinking in and are like, thank you. You are the cow in the field. They took what they wanted from you. You're their steak, and then they leave your dinner. And that works. Everything is energy. Everything needs energy. We're all vampires, folks. People want to talk about that. Like I said about the vampiric practice and drinking from other human beings, their energy. Well, that's sick. That's rude. What do you think you do on every fucking day of your life? This world is the world of vampires, Earth. You drink and you eat and you sleep. Drinking and eating is taking an energy. Sleeping is reviving your energy. Cows, fucking bulls, lizards, doesn't matter what it is. Everything eats, everything drinks, everything feeds, everything, over and over again in the wheel. It's a vampiric world. You need sustenance and energy to thrive and to stay strong. So we all feed. Spirits do the same exact thing. Why do you think the old saying, Manly Hall, a God forgotten is a God dethroned? Gods of the past were strong and created miracles. Once the world forgot about them or they were demified and the world feared and revered them and then eventually stopped thinking about them, they lost power. They didn't pop up in the world. The miracles weren't happening anymore and they seemed to have no power because just as Dan said, it's almost a form of egregore as a whole group or civilization worships, makes offerings, praises, fears and reveres. You were building a true powerful spirit. But as you stop giving those things and forget about it, it depletes and disappears, not completely, but it goes back to a very silent state. A group or a cult can create an egregore, what it looks like, what its name is, what it sounds like, all of that, and worship it every single day and make offerings to it. And you can create something just like a ghost that'll move objects in your home, that can kill people on command. This is real shit. And will go out and do things and you make offerings to it. You created it. We are the gods of this world. We can create with more than just our hands. Our will and our spiritual ethereal energy can create. Most people just don't understand it because they choose to keep a blind eye. They love being just captivated in the flesh. Go beyond that. Gentlemen.
Well,
sorry, I went on a tangent there, folks, but you guys needed to hear it.
No worries, no worries. So with the egregores discussion, I know, Dan, you do cryptid hunting and also go to places with extraterrestrial
That's right.
sightings.
That's right.
Do you feel that a lot of that field is started as egregores, a lot of the cryptids, and then they were manifested, or do you think there are ancient beings that have always been here and we just haven't explored enough of the world to really see them on a regular basis?
Great question. It's a little bit of a soup of frequencies in terms of both, but I would think that for the sake of this discussion, it's more so we're encountering in cryptozoology or in extraterrestrials. We're more so encountering real entities that either predate human civilization, live amongst us now, breakaway civilizations, things like that are concrete, like you and I. And then when it comes to, say, for example, manifesting like currents or energies or entities out of like a thought form, that you can tell a difference in their. How do I word this? There's a difference in those types of entities that tend to be more ethereal in their behavior, tend to be more supernatural, more metaphysical, more like I want to give you like an analogy, like say for example the Sasquatch, that's an absolute without a shadow of a doubt a physical entity like you and I are, a physical being. But then if something like the Slender Man, I think that those types of entities exist too, and those would be more like thought forms that were given power by a creator being like us, that oftentimes don't have a lot of power on their own because they were manifested from a spark like us that has given them life. So it's like a melting pot of both, but more so we're dealing with we're like in cryptozoology or an extraterrestrial presence, dealing with like real consciousness like you and I.
No, and I agree 100%. And I think the fact that I don't know the percentages off the top of my head, but we have so much of the world that we have not explored in depth.
Right.
And I think that's where the possibility of cryptids in my mind comes from, especially like the ocean and any cryptids in the ocean. Yeah,
Totally.
There's such a great chance that there are things down there. There's obviously things down there we
Totally.
don't know. And same with the in the woods. I mean, there's no way to fully explore the woods and without a shadow of doubt say, oh, there's no Sasquatch, there's no any other cryptid. So I agree in that case that I feel that it would be more physical form than an egregore. But I do believe in the possibility of egregores existing, and also just in general with even the spirit realm and the paranormal fields that we study. I think it's possible that there's a lot of that in that field as well.
Right.
Just there's definitely energy out there, and we don't know what it is. And my goal and ultimate goal would be to, kind of define exactly what we're interacting with, and then be able to use it as a tool in the real world, such as, we can figure out, oh, we are for sure, without a shadow of a doubt, however we figure it out, we are communicating with the dead. Well,
Right.
then if we can do that and conclude that, then is it possible that we could use that energy and that interaction with that energy to solve murders? Could we interact with that energy to expand our knowledge and be able to define, maybe take that energy and be able to have it travel into the space and see what's in a black hole?
Sure.
And just different things like that. I think the field, just if we can figure out a way to define what we're interacting with, we can definitely have other possibilities to use real world applications.
Totally. I'm with that. And it might come down to a point, one little quick thing, it might come down to a point, Mikey, where it's like, we're never going to be told by an authority figure. So we're taught at a very young age to listen to other people, to experts in the field, and to only follow official avenues by certified specialists who can tell us what the situation is or what that being is, in terms of like authority figures having the power to dictate what is. So in our field, the type of work that we do, us three guys and people like us, there will have to be a point where we choose for ourselves the definitions of these things, how to work with them, how to engage with them, even our terms and labels, because we're never going to be told in a mass consensus way what it is. And then once we get to a point amongst ourselves where we can choose and say, okay, well, you know what? Here is my conclusion about this particular creature or that particular phenomenon in spirits. And here are some definitions that I've come up with after my research and my experiences. Here are my labels. Here's what I'm going to do with it. Or here's how I think people in our community can experiment with some things based on what my research is, based on what my opinion is of so many years of studying and practicing. I think that in our field, like I was having an awesome interview on the show. I think it was called Into the Fray with Shannon LeGros. And she brought out like this concept to me that I'd never said before, but I'm so glad we got to it in this discussion. And I want to share it here, is that we have to be the difference. We have to be the change we want to see in, like, whether it's science or whether it's metaphysics or whether it's this paranormal field, where it's like, we're the way showers. We're going to have to be the ones to start labeling things and defining them, even if it means that a lot of it is not taken as fact or conclusive evidence, because this information isn't given to the mass consensus by the news, by the government, like, because like those certified scientists didn't conclude that Bigfoot is real, or that, when we pass on, we leave a remnant of our energy behind in like this astral realm that's still very real like ours. It's just on a different band, and here's how we can interact with those entities, and here's how they can help us. We might never get that from an official avenue or a certified specialist or a certified scientist. So us as a community, we can be the ones to start defining things and then take action with it. And so I hope that makes sense, because I feel like we have the power to do that.
Yeah, it's just a matter of being able to conclusively make what our hypotheses are, make them into an actual theory. And
I understand that.
it's just so difficult because there's so much, like the devices, obviously all of them have faults.
Sure.
Even when you interact with something, like Frater was saying, is it that you're actually interacting with something else, or is it your mind and your energy creating that interaction?
Sure.
So it's just the unknown, and I feel like if there's a way to conclusively define it
I agree.
at all, then there's so many different real world applications we could use that for.
I'm with that, and I totally understand and respect how you feel, and I agree. The only caveat is that I use this sort of principle, like in my business and things like that. There might never be a definitive moment where
Yeah.
we know this is enough. So at some point, we'll have to just take action with what we have to the best of our ability, and that might be enough in of itself, even if we're not ready or we don't think like this is enough to convince people, or this is enough evidence to show that this is a real thing and here's how we use it. I think that like guys like us, three of us, probably in somewhere in our database of experiences, we have some pretty credible, convincing first count experiences that may never be enough for the mass consensus, but we know that they give us enough evidence to conclude that this is a thing. Here and then you sit down and you just ask yourself, you get a pen and paper and you write out some ideas. What can I do with this right now with what I have available to me now? And that could grow. Maybe someday we'll have like these aha moments that are totally like incredible that we can share. But up until that point, I try to teach myself this principle that I'm never going to wait forever until the perfect moment, that I'm always trying to take action with the tools that I have now, in a sense. So that's what I'll do. That's what I am doing with my work.
Well, and I think a thing that we need to understand is that we try to compare things to science, and people will use that term. Well, this isn't scientifically proven, or where's the science behind it? Folks, you have to understand that science is even a theory. That science constantly is changing. Think of history until now, and think
That's
of
right.
new scientific inventions and new scientific applications that have come out that have changed the world, only for years or decades later, them to discover the flaws within those same worldly accepted ideas. Think of before quantum physics and quantum mechanics. Matter was a definite thing. Matter exists. There's no other way around it. Matter is real. And then quantum physics and mechanics comes out and says, well, actually on a quantum level, we're all energy and there is no such thing as matter. There's only the perception of what we believe to be matter. And a lot of people, that's blasphemy. And as more experiments went on, you're like, holy shit, I think this is real. Or it's not real, depending upon how you look at it. And it changed the game. So then everything before it that was taken as cement facts now has fallen apart and become loose. And now we believe the quantum physics theory. And then what happens when something comes along and changes that and proves, well, that's not exactly accurate either. We've discovered something else. And that's the same thing with metaphysics. That's the same thing with spirituality and with, the study of the paranormal and the supernatural. We can come up with very solid hypotheses and ideas and even find ways to do experimentation that brings results again and again and again. And we can hold tight on it. And it doesn't have to be accepted by everyone. No, 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 no. If it means and it speaks to you, it can change your life. Look at the Kabbalistic tree of life in the Sitra Achra. These are ways of understanding the heavens and the hells and understanding, theology and theosophy and cosmology and cosmogony that the ancient Kabbalists came up with. Of course, not everybody accepts that or believes in that or follows that or even knows about it. But what I will tell you is by studying it, by connecting the dots and getting into this meta system. A meta system is a system made up of numerous different individual concepts, and each concept in itself is metaphysical. That's exactly what the tree of life and the tree of death are. And when you get into them and start connecting these dots, it'll absolutely change your mind, body, spirit, and soul in every possible way. Can you prove it? No, it can't be proved. It's just theology. It's just an idea, a commonly accepted makeup of how we understand reality and the making of God and the making of human beings. doesn't have to be accepted by your neighbors, doesn't have to be accepted by your wife, doesn't have to be accepted by your children, doesn't mean it can't absolutely change your life. So as paranormal researchers, and I use that term, not investigators, not ghost hunters, but as researchers, our job is to try to find a way to understand what's behind the veil or beyond the veil and interact with it, make a way that we can do this fluidly time and time again with results that we can see, that we can take data analysis and put it in and give it to others that some, not everybody, but some can perform and get those same results and say, holy shit, I think they figured out something here. Doesn't mean that there won't be someone that comes around and improvises or improves, I should say, our theories or replaces it with a better one. But you know what? Isn't that the point? Some people would say, no, I want to be the king kahuna. I never want someone to outdo me. I'm the opposite, folks. I want to come up with a way that you guys can interact with spirit that works great. But if my son or his generation comes along and outdoes me and blows me out of the fucking water with a new idea, that fuck yeah, that's what I'm looking for. Let's keep thinking beyond the box. Let's keep growing and keep finding a way to tear and render the veil to see what's beyond it, because that's what we are. What's beyond that veil is us. And we are only experiencing it from this side. Well, let's take a peek behind the other one. And I think that's important. And I think that people too much get caught up on that's not science. Well, who the fuck says? Metaphysics is science, just a different branch of science that you don't want to acknowledge. It's pseudoscience. Well, let me tell you what, for a very, very long time, people believed in geocentric thinking, that everything revolved around Earth and we just sat still. And the first person to come along and said, well, actually, I believe in heliocentric. I believe that we revolve around the sun. They fucking burned him at the stake because that was heresy. And there's no way the world revolves around the sun. Well, guess what we all use now, folks? A heliocentric theory of how the world works, and we all revolve around our star known as the sun. So a lot of ideas won't be accepted. Sometimes you'll be murdered for your ideas and being called a heretic, only for later on people to accept it as science and or factual information. So
and it's someday becoming like the status quo, the norm. So like some of the ET races that I work with, recently I just heard that what's metaphysical to us is common in their science for them. It's just common knowledge. And I love what you said about the fact that science is always changing. And the last thing I'll say on this, and then I actually have a question for you, Mikey, is the last thing I'll say is that it may come down to a matter of choice, right? Just choosing that my data, my experiences, the work that I do, the things I believe in are enough. And that isn't always going to be able to be measured or qualified or approved or disapproved by the mass consensus, but it will come down to like the hero's journey, the individuals, the subjective experience that you're having. Like, okay, like I feel good about this. This is right for me. And this is enough. And so here's what I'm going to do with it. And like, say, for example, your experiment that you're going to do, that is you. That's a great example of you sort of like doing your own thing and collecting your own data and trusting that you are confident in your work, and whatever the results that may or may not happen for you, I feel like you're open to that, which is great. And we can apply that same formula, that philosophy to literally everything in our fields and the type of work that we do. And but at some point, my only point, I know I keep repeating myself, but that at some point we'll have to say that this is enough for me, at least. I choose this to be real. I choose this to be the choice.
Yeah, and that's the evolution of knowledge too. I mean, I'm hoping doing this, maybe someone will see those results or lack of results and then expand on it. And that's all science is just expanding on other people's hypothesis. And yeah, I agree 100%. I hope that someday the field will be more definitive. We'll know the energy we're interacting with. All we can do, like you both are saying, is we can do what we can in our time, and hopefully people will expand upon it. And, you know, eventually people will be able to develop concrete theories on what's going on exactly.
And we're the way showers right now.
Yeah, it's definitely the infancy stage for sure.
When we can't expect people, and once again, you know, do what we do every day, put in the work, every day, search for the result, but never expect anything. Expectancy is the killer of growth, because when you expect, you're putting your theories, your ideas, and your work into a box that it might not be meant to be put in. So we have to just do the work, believe in the process, and see what results, because you might a year from now hear those echoes in your basement and show a bunch of people and be so proud of it. And they'd be like, who gives a shit?
Yeah,
That
yeah.
doesn't mean anything to me.
Doing it for me.
Meanwhile, it blew your
Yeah,
mind and you're like,
yeah,
oh my God, I found something special. And
yeah.
people around you shoot it down and want to and smother those ideas. Only for 10 years from now, you're sitting back and someone that had maybe more money than you or more pull than you or had the right connections do the same thing and it blow up and you're like, I did this 10 years ago. But the point is you are constantly searching and diving deeper to get to that level. And that is why, and I have been a strong advocate, and it's another thing I say, and people are not fans of, and I give a fuck not, is there are 3 categories to this work. There are ghost hunters, there are investigators, and then there are paranormal researchers. Sometimes those lines are blurred and crossed, but far to the left, and I'm no directions meaning anything, I'm just separating them. Far to the left is ghost hunters and chasers, where they're just out for the thrill. They're just out to get their dick hard off of fucking having an activity. And that's cool. I don't respect it. I hate it, but whatever. It's going to be out there. Do your thing. Then you have investigators. And I mean real investigators who are trying to find the history and find out, and they're diving in deep. But then you have that mix in between where you are trying to get some history, but really you're just trying to get your dick hard by talking to them and having them answer you. And then that's kind of a blur between them. But then you have far to the right, the researchers who sometimes yes, you'll ask the same questions. You'll use spirit box. You use a lot of methods that other people were doing. And that's your investigation side kind of bleeding through, but where you're stepping out of the box and doing shit that just doesn't make sense to other people. What are they doing? I'm here to get 25 hellos on my spirit box. Yeah. Fuck that. I don't want 25 hellos. I would rather sit for 4 hours and get silence. And on this crazy experiment that's out of the box, one thing happened the entire night that just blows my mind. Using different things like, and Dan and I have talked about this, brain hemispheric synchronization entrainment. Something I've talked heavily on. I use it in ritual. It's earth shattering. I know there's people that have heard it and taken notes. I know that there's people probably going to use my ideas. I'm not the one who created it, but they'll use those ideas in the field and do much more than I'm able to do with it. And that's great. It's not mine to keep, but you can tap in and create higher levels of consciousness at the location to see the spirits, to connect with them. And this is shit that people don't want to do because it takes time. You're going to spend 2 hours listening to this frequency in your ear hole before you have any interaction. Well, that's 2 hours I could have got the name Jane, Steven, Sue, and Ken, through my headphones. Oh man, I missed out on that. Does that really get you anywhere? So we have to define the lines, I think, of, are you in it for research and trying to break the game? Or are you in it just to interact with spirits? Because I don't need to go to any of these places. I can sit right here in this very basement, turn on a spirit box, and I'll get answers that seem intelligent, that seem to match what I'm asking. I can have flashlights turn on in my basement. I can hear knocks in my basement. And folks, my basement isn't special. The more you sit day in and day out and interact and talk to yourself out loud, the more spirits will show up. The more the currents will bleed in. That river creates a tributary that then flows into your home that never was before. Creating paranormal phenomena isn't that phenomenal. Even though it's still amazing, it's able to be done by every one of us. But it's then understanding that by being able to bring that into your home, how do you interact with it and breach beyond what's already been done? Knocking, hellos, names, and flashlight hits are fun. They're a great party trick to show all your friends. Let's breach beyond that. Let's go further. Let's find out what's doing it, how it does it, and how can we get deeper. And that's all I'm saying. And like I said, don't expect anybody to accept it or care. Don't even show it off. If you show it off, someone's going to steal that shit and then use it as their own. So keep it to yourself. Write a fucking memoir. Write a book about it. And 20 years after your death, it'll come out and you can be a genius that people talk about. But remember, the world might shun you for your ideas, only later on to find out that you were right all along. But that takes pride in your work and dedication. And Mikey B, I think what you're doing with that specific experiment is beautiful. And I think it's something that you might not get the results you imagine, but I'm sure you're going to get results of some sort as long as you stick true to it and you have ambition.
Yeah, definitely. And going off of, people may not really appreciate your work till after you're dead. Maybe your work will help them interact with you, so they can let you know how great your work was responded to in the future.
Exactly. They might be channeling you or talking to you later on, and
Yeah.
you'll now have a whole different understanding of how spirits work because you're dead.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So that's and it brings the point of mediums. Like I said earlier, because the one thing people will try to disprove what I said earlier is, well, then how does a medium say that they're telling me right now that it's okay, they forgive you, and there was a fight the last time that person connected? Well, how would they know my dad said he forgave me? I believe the Akashic records. I believe that once again, we are the conduit, the skin, the vessel, the avatar is the conduit, not only for our own consciousness, but all consciousnesses through the collective unconscious. And if we learn how to sharpen that vessel, that receptiveness, we start pulling files of things and sticking it into our mind. And that's what happens. We know a play-by-play of exactly what John lived in his life and what he did. And did he forgive his son before he died? Didn't he? Is it that John's talking to us? Maybe, but it's also could be that I'm putting that tape in and playing it, because through ritual, you can reach the Akashic records and you can start dipping into people's lives and understanding their thoughts and all kinds of stuff. That's a real thing. So once again, it comes back to, is that person physically as a dead person's spirit talking to you? Or are you every person that ever existed inside of you? How big is that universe inside here? Not the brain, not the flesh, but inside there, connecting with spirit, you become endless, and it's all in there. All we're experiencing at all moments is ourselves through different means. Now let's talk documentaries. I think that's a good. I'm going to let Dan take on this one, because Mike, obviously, for those listening out there, Mike has released several documentaries at this point with his group, Bumping the Night Society. Done a great job at different locations they've gone to. Dan obviously is a very well, produced, documentarian who's done a lot of different things in his field.
Definitely better than me on the producing side, for sure.
But it's no race, man. It's no race. There's no, who's better than who. It's about, once again, getting the work out there and putting the truth out there for people to ponder and grow. So I want Dan, jump in and ask this guy some questions from someone who's very prominent in your field, on documentaries, because Mike has done a good job releasing some good stuff.
Yeah, well, it sounds like you've done more than I have. I can tell you that much. I'm a career-based videographer. I'm a filmmaker. That's just what I do for a living. That's my trade. I love producing films and narratives and docs. And so what I wanted to ask you was a little bit about your video production and what exactly do you do? What are the roles that you play in that? Do you sort of like, so let's say, for example, your documentaries. I'd love to hear about your format, how you produce those, and how you go about making those, and where can we see them?
Yeah, of course. I like to say that, I mean, my experience as far as, videography and whatnot, it has been my high school AV club. So our, our experience is a little different. So my documentaries are like pretty rough, but I'm growing as I go along. So, our first documentary that we did was Discombobulated in the Dark, which Frater was featured in as well, at Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum. So typically, I'm more about showcasing the evidence that I get at investigations, regardless of how shoddy my camera work can be. It's getting better. I'm learning how to frame a little better, because I use tripods during investigations. And my first couple that we put out, I only had one camcorder. So it was a camcorder on a tripod, but it was more about the interaction that you're getting, and then being able to correlate that with the history of the location you're investigating, as well as trying to expand on the history and trying to identify things that other, people don't typically either get at a location, different methods that we are using. Ryan came in. Mikey is being modest. He's great. No, Ryan is a good videographer. I am definitely not a good videographer.
Do you guys work together? Have you collaborated?
Yeah.
Okay.
He comes to a lot of investigations with us. He is excellent with the lives that we do, the live streaming. I like to do more of the actual like analysis of evidence and stuff to that extent. Ryan's an excellent host too for the live streams. He's really does deep dives into history. So he's excellent. I'm not by any means a great videographer, but yeah, I like to showcase more the actual investigation. And a lot of people find that boring because we're not gonna like get a response and be like, "Oh my god, what was that?" Like it's not like the made-for-TV shit that you see.
Just full Zach Bagans.
Yeah, exactly. It's like you're not interacting with a demon all the time, and stuff like that. But so typically what I do is my first step is I analyze the evidence and I do a deep dive. I watch all the evidence, and obviously I'm not gonna catch everything.
Sure.
But I do try to watch it the first time over. I'll watch it listening to the audio and focusing on that. I'll probably go through a 45-minute video of a session that we did, and I'll listen to it probably like 2 or 3 times, and I take notes just on paper and timestamp it. If I hear something, I'll timestamp it. And then I'll watch it probably 2 or 3 times again without really paying attention as much to the audio, but looking for visuals, seeing what's in the background. It's trying to catch something moving or, something to the extent that, there could be a potential phenomenon. And then after I do this for all the video that I've collected throughout the investigation, I'll also listen to, I use a lot of digital voice recorders during investigation. So I'll go through that. That can be very, very time consuming.
Hours.
Tedious.
Yeah. And a lot of the times too, you'll hear something and you'll be like, I can't make it out, but it sounds like there's something there. And then you'll have to time it up with the video to make sure someone didn't just, pop. Or something to that extent. Like when we investigated the Anchorage mansion years ago, I thought I got the best EVP. I forget the story, but I was sitting where this woman's bed supposedly was, and I was asking questions, just general questions, and I heard it, and I was trying to make out the voice and listen to the voice tone, and then after listening to it for probably 30 minutes straight, just over and over again, I realized it was just, Phil sniffling and clearing his throat. And I was like, oh, God damn it. So that's the hard part is you got to try to kind of debunk things as you're going through. And then once you get all your notes down, then you can kind of not create the story, but see where what story the investigation tells you. So based on the history of the location, based on, what interactions you get, what can I do a more deep dive into to try to correlate these findings to what I know about the location, or I know about the individuals? Because like Frater has said, and I believe you said too, Dan, are we creating these hauntings as well? Is it our projections?
Right.
So you kind of have to analyze things not only based on the history, but also just based in general, what are the best responses that I'm getting, and how are they correlating not to just the history, but also our individual, histories and perspectives, I guess, in a way. For example, I have a documentary I'm working on right now, and I don't want to share it because I don't want to give a spoiler.
Sure.
I think I did tell Frater about it, but I had this Spirit Box EVP that came through. And it was so clear, but I had no clue. I kind of went into the investigation relatively blind. I did get a brief rundown of some of the history from one of the workers. The owner actually had COVID, so I wasn't able to talk to her, and she wasn't able to give me the full tour. So I got more of just the layout and, a couple things that she knew about the history. But I got this EVP and it was so clear, and I included it in the a lot of the times once I get the evidence, the most clear aspects of the investigation analyzed, I will make a little video, and I will meet up with the owner of the location and play the findings to see if it correlates with anything outside of the known history, outside of what other investigators may have presented, or if it's a location that wasn't investigated before, does any of this make sense based on what you know about the location? Because I want to get someone that actually lives there, or somebody that, you know, has spent a lot of time there and knows a lot of the history to give me a perspective and also analyze the evidence. But yeah, I got this EVP. It was so clear. So I included it, and I was playing the reel. And as I'm playing the reel, they're like, "Oh my God, did that just say that?" And I was like, "Yeah, I wasn't going to include it because it didn't seem like it correlated with, you know, what I knew about the history. It was just kind of seemed random, but it was so clear." And they're like, "Oh no, it is 100% correlates with something the prior owner experienced."
Okay.
And it wasn't even at the location. It was just, and that's why I'm calling the documentary "They're Always Listening," just because I think that, you know, it's energy that's there. It's not necessarily a person that is deceased. Even it's just energy that. Oh, my alarm's actually going off for the experiment. I'll skip it tonight, but
Do it afterwards.
Don't skip it. Do it right after the show.
It won't be the right time though.
Okay.
But yeah, they just, their jaws dropped. They're like, "Did that really just say that?" And I was like, "Yeah." And it was like I said, something that the prior owner experienced, not at the location, but just in her life in general. And that's the best part, is when you get those things. And I'll tell you off camera, Dan, because it was a pretty cool interaction.
Sure.
It's when you get those, and then you get to also record their reaction to what you're presenting to them. And that's another good part of being able to include in these documentaries is, you know, they weren't at the investigation. You know, they just own the place, or they're affiliated with the location at some, you know, capacity. And being able to showcase, like, this is what I found, or what we found, and this was what their reaction is, and having them expand even further than what the known knowledge is amazing. So I usually do like an evidence reel with the owners if they are available, and then I do further analysis. So a lot of the times I'll go back through and see, okay, well, they said that, you know, there was nothing really with this, and it doesn't seem, you know, that's when you kind of can throw stuff out if there's no, you know, known history or any
Correlation.
Correlation. So it really helps with what you're looking to present and the story you're looking to tell. And then afterwards, after that's all done, then you kind of plan out production as far as, you know, how are we going to do this? I always like to do the investigations, how the investigation happened. I'm sure shows and stuff probably bounce around like, oh, well, we want to end this, and there's a commercial coming up at this point. So we want to make sure that we give them the craziest shit right here so that we can keep the viewership through the commercials. And, you know, I like to do it as the investigation goes. So it's like you're actually in the investigation.
It's progressional.
Yeah.
And where can we see all your work? Where can we check it out?
We have a YouTube page, just Bumping the Night Society.
Cool.
We've trying to think how many documentaries. I don't even know. And I know one was like a 2-parter.
Is there a particular one you're proud of that you think that we should check out?
I would say probably the Bel Air House one, which Frater was there as well. That's probably my personal favorite. I do think I would have changed the production a little bit. It's called Possessed and Oppressed in a town called Bel Air. Because we did I showcased the investigation, and then we did an evidence reveal with the owner. And a lot of the times during the evidence reveal, I would replay a lot of the investigation. So I've switched how I do that now. And as the investigation goes along, I showcase the evidence reveal. So you're not, having to re-see it. Cause I think the documentary was like 2.5 hours long.
It was long. Yeah.
Yeah. It was very, very long. We actually showed it in a theater in Pittsburgh after we released it too. I'm hoping the one that I'm working on, because it has been taking a lot longer than typically I put into these, but I think the production's probably going to be a little better. Probably not up to Dan's speed, but
sure, it's awesome, man.
It'll be a little bit better than what I've been putting out. So I'm hoping we can possibly do another theater release if it comes together like I'm hoping it does.
It's just
Cool,
awesome
man.
that you got a chance to put it in the theaters, that you had people that could come and buy tickets and go and sit and watch it in an actual movie theater is a really cool
Yeah, as a
accomplishment.
filmmaker, I regularly go to the independent films and local releases, so definitely let me know if you do something like that. I'd be happy to come.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. And if anything that you put out, is
Thank
in
you.
the theater or even on YouTube. I mean, I watched your release. What was the name of the location? I can't think of it. That you all went to.
Kecksville?
Which one?
Kecksburg.
Oh,
Or
okay. Yes,
Kecksburg,
yes,
yeah.
yes, yeah, yeah. That was amazing production too.
Thank you.
I give you props on that.
Yeah, he
Thanks,
crushed
brother.
it
I'm
on
proud
that,
of
man.
that.
It was
Yeah.
a fun little project, Dan. Definitely smashed it out the park. But I mean, don't sell yourself short, man. I mean, the amount of time it takes to listen to that audio over and over again to figure out what the spirits are saying, to match it up with the film, to edit each and every snippet with the film and the audio
A lot
together.
of work.
There's a
Yeah.
lot
Oh,
of
yeah.
work to put it all together into one package. um, a lot can be said for that. So don't ever sell yourself short. I know you mentioned Ryan earlier. I'll give kudos to him. He does very well in his production of things that he puts out. He does a lot of deep diving as well. If you haven't checked out his work, folks, please do. And it brings me into my next topic. Ryan was recently a guest on Exploring Your Society, which you were a co-host on that show with, Sean Bowman, who is one of the other team lead with you on Bumping the Night Society, your group. So talk to us a little bit about your guys' radio show, what it is you guys focus on, and also where we can check that out, because folks, they do have a YouTube, they do have an Instagram, a Facebook, and then very, very big on the TikTok. So why don't you tell us a little bit about the radio show and kind of what that entails as well.
Yeah, I mean it's very similar to what you guys do as far as free conversation flow. There's no set questions or anything like that. We just kind of let the conversation go as it just naturally flows. We have a variety of guests too, some paranormal related, some independent artists. We've had independent filmmakers on. So it doesn't necessarily have to be paranormal, but we usually do at least ask some paranormal questions with whoever the guest is. But yeah, it's just a conversation. It's a different perspective. And I know when Ryan was on, that was probably one of my favorite conversations. He's his career, he has ventures in robotics and stuff to that extent. So we did deep dive into topics that I really know nothing about, but I was trying to speak somewhat intelligently on. It went from robotics to AI and free will, and just expanded from there. So yeah, you never know where the conversation's going to go. There'll probably be some poop jokes as thrown in there as well. Usually my cat's litter box is right behind me. So usually on podcasts, she times out taking a nasty dump as I'm on the podcast, which she didn't do tonight. I'm kind of disappointed, but yeah, it goes from, intelligent conversation to toilet humor. So just like my documentaries do. So it's that's one thing I always like, because a lot of people say like, it's just so boring. And I'm like, yeah, but it's boring because it's real. It's not fabricated. I'm not going to do jump scares because I'm not scared. I try to avoid showing fear when we're at an investigation. But at the same time, yeah, I might throw in a selfie of me taking a crap at a haunted location. Like, I do want there to be some fun to it. Even during investigations, I feel that, it's the energy that you bring is what comes out. And
Right.
I feel like if you're not going to have fun doing it, but there's a line. And sometimes, on our team, we do cross the line where it's too much fun. So I like to be serious with our interactions, but at the same time, like, if you're under the theory that we're interacting with, deceased people, they probably want to have some fun too if they're at this location. So I do like to incorporate music into our investigations and different things to just, bring energy and kind of let the energy at these locations come out, and it can be fun too.
Well, and I mean, like you said, it is what you put into it. So the thing is if someone is terrified, someone's scared, someone has anger, or someone has trauma and repressed baggage, that can manifest in various ways. Possessions, a lot of times, aren't a spirit overtaking a person. It is the opening, once again, that igniting spark hitting this ethereal current that's there in a different way than normal supernatural phenomena. And sometimes without you realizing it, you cast that spark, it ignites, and a hidden, repressed part of yourself comes to life. And a lot of times that is a possession. It's not something overtaking you. It's the repressed trauma that you haven't faced yet overtaking you, which can take a monstrous form. If you come to a location with monsters in your closet and you keep asking for them to open the door, sometimes they do. And you just don't realize that they're you. Like I said before. So that's why you go in with fun. You go in serious, but you go in with fun. You're going to have a good time usually. I mean, that's it's kind of basic rules. Another important thing is to blank your mind sometimes. Don't think about anything. Just go quiet and blank the slate and allow what happens to happen. You're not salting what is happening. You're not flavoring in any way with you. If you can learn to go to oneness and blankness, which is a meditative technique, then you can see what is there without your influence on it. Because I do definitely think, as we've talked about a few times tonight, we influence everything, whether it is fully external, fully internal, or it's a mixture of both. We are influencing it in some way, shape, or form. So if you can blank your mind, then you can see what it is without you.
Yes.
Now, two things I want to get into before we wrap up tonight. One, I would love to know, what are your top 3 locations or happenings that have happened to you since you've been to so many different places now? You've made documentaries, you've got to deep dive through so much audio and video and just all these different experiences. What are your top 3 places or experiences that you've had?
Well, I can do both. Top 3 locations. I mean, we've had so much at the Bel Air House. That's definitely up there. I would say the Monroe House. I don't know if you had a chance to investigate there,
I have not.
Frater. You definitely need to get out there. We've investigated there twice. It's kind of similar. There's a lot of mystery. I mean, they call it the mysterious Monroe House for a reason. There's definitely something angry. Everyone throws out the demon word all the time, and I don't think there's any necessarily demonic energy, but there's definitely a negative energy to the location. It's one that there's a hole in the basement, and I was doing the Estes method the first time we were there. And Sean was asking me questions. It was just the two of us. I crawled up in the hole, and I'm at the entranceway of the hole so he could hear what I was calling out. And I just kept getting a man coming through clear, just saying, "I'm going to get him. I'm going to grab him. I'm going to get him." And where the hole it developed in the wall, it's a dirt floor, and then there's like an old carpet that sits on top of the dirt floor. And as he's saying, "I'm going to get him. I'm going to grab him. I'm going to get him," I felt like something come up from it was like the carpet kind of came up a little bit, and it literally felt like a hand cupping my balls. And I instantly jumped out. I mean, I don't get freaked out in investigations, but you get your balls grabbed, yeah, you're going to jump out of the hole for sure.
So it's a ghost glory hole then.
Yeah, pretty much. But,
I'm going to be visiting the Monroe House, folks.
Yeah,
I'm getting
for sure.
myself out there,
And
getting my
line up.
freak on.
Yeah,
I'm lining it up.
You get some dead man grubbing your balls,
Hey, I've tried a lot of things. I haven't been there yet, so it's on my to-do list.
Yeah, it's an intense place for sure. And I know you're like me. You will jump up in that hole in the basement. Last time I crawled to the back, did an Estes. We did a double Estes method in there, and we got some really interesting results. They actually found human remains in that hole.
I dig it.
Yeah, it's a good place.
I know a thing or two about human remains as
I
well.
know.
So it'll work out pretty good. Estes testes, baby. We're going to get in there and experiment.
Yep. And then I would say, I mean, those are definitely the top 2. I would say probably Greenville Manor. Yeah, even though it's not around, that was, I love that place. Hillview Manor is also amazing. Yeah, it's hard to pick like a top 3 for sure. Like the top
Yes.
2 I definitely have there, but that third one, there's so many different options for sure.
Yeah, Trans Allegheny's up there for me as being
Yeah.
one of the top 3, just because it's sheer size and magnitude, and I've experienced some pretty phenomenal stuff there. But no, it's some great locations, great happenings. Like I said, I'm gonna be poking in the Monroe House at some point.
Yeah,
Poking me in the
definitely.
key. We have Matt Somerville saying Greenville. I had never got a chance to go to Greenville. Unfortunately, now obviously it's no longer there. I
Yeah.
got shafted out of a few different great locations. Greenville. I was supposed to go to Crescent, and then all that shit happened. And
Yeah.
that fell through. So no Crescent prison for me. I wanted to go to Rolling Hills Asylum in New York, but then I found out that the owner's a fucking psycho. So that's still open, folks. If you want to go deal with a psycho from top of the coast, you can go up there. I've never had any dealings with her, but I mean, read the fucking Better Business Bureau. That'll be enough for you.
Yeah,
No, that's
I've heard
great.
stories.
Yeah, it's been some crazy stuff out there. So be careful in the paranormal. There's a lot of sharks out there, folks. But get out there and explore some different areas, different locations. Talk to the spirits. As I said before, the more you put yourself out there, the more interactions you're going to have. Now, to wrap this up, and if I step over the line, Mike, stop me. I don't want you to give away anything that you're not willing to give away.
Okay.
We can direct it a different way, but you are also working on a completely separate project away from the paranormal, away from the radio
okay.
shows. You are working on, and like I said, you don't have to tell us title or even about it. You can just say, I'm releasing it, but you are currently in the works of a book. Am I correct?
Yes. The book, the print version is done. I'm working on the audiobook. Unfortunately, my son is in daycare, so he brings home the plague every 2 weeks. So my voice hasn't been up to par to do all the voices that go into the stories. Because what I'm doing is I'll tell the basic concept because Frater definitely knows.
Yeah.
I interviewed people about, and also tell my own stories of inebriation. And so I would interview people, they would tell me their story. I'm taking notes. And I would sometimes try to develop a theme based on their story. So there's one where I didn't even have to develop a theme. There was just a beast that existed in this story. Based on some of the inebriants this person took and what their actions afterwards. Also, I have a story in the book where a gentleman almost got arrested 3 times in one night, and I kind of gave the theme of A Christmas Carol, where he's visiting the ghost of Christmas present, past, and future. And each time and obviously there's some fabrication to that because he's not being visited by actual spirits. But each time he interacted with a cop, he would think, the first one, he would think back like, what did I do to get to this point? And think about his past. And then, what the next one, what is he doing now? What did I do now to get to this point? And then the last one is obviously future. Like, what am I going to do if I don't make changes? So it's just different themes like that that I've incorporated into a lot of these stories. And then some of the stories, it's just flat out the story because it was just, completely ridiculous. But the audio book is going to be a big, it's going to take a lot of time because I'm not doing it where I'm just narrating it in my own voice. I'm making all the voices. So if there's a female voice, it's me. If there's a male voice, if there's a sound effect, I'm making it somehow. So it's kind of like almost like an old school radio show in a way, where it is kind of cheesy, but it does take a lot of work to put into it. And I'm adding a bonus chapter because as I was like starting telling people about it, I was starting to tell other stories that I completely forgot about. So yeah, it's definitely beyond, definitely not correlating with the paranormal at all. It's definitely just more like an inebriated tale.
Well, no, we look forward to that. So, folks, I mean, obviously out there, you can see this man does a lot of different things, from being on his own radio show as a co-host, to being at different conventions in the paranormal, to his own research and documentary releases, to a book that he's currently writing and doing the audio version. He's always entertaining. He's always putting out information and different content out there. So make sure you support him as a person and as an artist. Make sure you support Bump in the Night Society, Exploring Your Society, and the Book of Inebriation, which will come out at some point.
That's not the title, but it will be a book of inebriation.
Correct. Yeah, that wasn't me naming it. And there's some funny stories in there, and I might even make an appearance on some of these stories. So feel free to check that out and support this man and everything he does. Last, Mike, and then I'll let Dan take over for the finish here. Is there anything you would tell someone getting into this field? Because, I mean, there's a lot of fuckery in this field. There's a lot of not knowing which way to go. What is the truth? What isn't the truth? How do I formulate my own opinions and thoughts? Is someone is stepping in right now saying, I've always felt drawn to the paranormal and I want to start researching and I want to get in there. How do I start, Mike?
Well, I would say ignore a lot of the bullshit you see on TV. Not everything's a demon. You're not going to jump around. Don't go. You have to go into these investigations with no fear. You're there to collect data. You're there to interact. You're not there to run around screaming and, putting video out there so you get to the next commercial. I would say be true to yourself. Analyze the data that you collect with integrity. Don't put stuff out there that is false. And I would say, your first investigation, take a digital voice recorder and just go somewhere. Just go to a cemetery, go wherever you want. But you have to be careful, because a lot of people always say, why do you do it? It seems like there's so much danger. There's so much danger. There's more danger driving to work. There's more danger, swimming in the ocean. It's the same thing. It's swimming in the ocean. Sometimes nothing will happen. And then sometimes there's a big ass shark that's going to eat you. Yep. But we can't live in fear and we're by design explorers, and we want to expand our knowledge. So just get out there and whatever you're comfortable with. And if something happens, you're not comfortable with it, then stop doing it.
No, I think that's sound advice. I mean, that's exactly what we are. There's danger in every turn, folks. I mean, you can't live your life in fear. And to be honest with you, you're going to encounter astral parasites and things. Learn ways to take consecrated and cleansing baths. Find ways of doing fumigations to cleanse yourself. Find a way to get rid of those things. That's going to happen. That's going to happen whether you go out and do investigations or you just live your life. And let me tell you, you're probably going to pick up a lot more parasites from all the fuckery and people that are around you than you are going to be going to a location and talking to the spirits.
Constant bombardment.
Bombardment of parasites by the people around
Sexually
you.
transmitted demons.
Exactly. And even if you go to a concert and you're bumping into all kinds of people, guess what, folks? You got all kinds of shit on you. And this is an everyday occurrence. So you can't be afraid to go out and interact with the spirits out there, because everything you do, unbeknownst to you, you're interacting with the spirits already. So just go out there and have some fun. Dan?
Listen, man, Mikey, from one filmmaker to another. Pleasure to meet you. Pleasure to talk to you. I look forward to checking out your work. Hopefully seeing something in a local cinema. But I will actually go this weekend. I'll go on your YouTube and check something out.
No, I appreciate that. Yeah, definitely check out the Bel Air one. You'll see Fraters' beautiful face in there as well.
Cool, man.
Absolutely. Well, guys, like I said, support him out there. Make sure you click the like, share, follow, and subscribe, not only on our show, but his and everything that he and his team are doing. They will be at a town near you soon, I'm sure. They're all over the place at every convention. So go out and meet them, shake their hands, buy their merch, support them, and just, get to know what it is that they do. They're great people. Other than that, we have another interview for you next week, which would be, what the fuck day is that? That is the first. And we have a return guest, Tim Shaw, a great personality in the paranormal scene. He has been a consultant on different TV shows. He has his own podcast, the Black Cat Lounge, that he has had for quite some time.
Years.
He's one of the OGs in interviewing people in the
before
paranormal.
like the internet.
Yeah, he did it. He did it literally before there was like regular podcasts and internet. He's an old school cat, and he does a great job. We're looking forward to bringing him back on, picking his brain on some things. We have a couple content topic subjects coming up in our episodes. Another interview we're arranging right now, and before the end of the season, we'll have the Odd World call-in. So if you have had experiences out there and you want to share them, whether writing into us, calling into us, being on the show, we would love to have you, hear from you. Make sure you join our Facebook group, share your different ideas and experiments and things with us. It's a safe, nice community of people that are like-minded, talking to one another, and that is Celestial Oddities Facebook group page, and like the Celestial Oddities radio page as well. All that's a tongue twister. So make sure you go check all that out, and we always appreciate from the bottom of our hearts you tuning into our show, you supporting the underground, and get out there and talk to some ghosts.
Hell
and
yeah,
find the
get it
ghost
done.
glory hole.
Get those ST demons, baby.
Get those ST demons, baby. That's right. Well, Mikey, thank you again for coming on, brother.
No, thank you guys.
And
definitely appreciate it.
Absolutely. Much love to you. Go get your experiment in. I know it's a little bit past time, but maybe try it out.
Do it anyways.
Yeah, I might just Mamma Mia.
No, that's it. Mama, you'll hear my voice in the background.
You're just in the background of the podcast.
Yeah. All right, guys. Well, we love you. We'll catch you next week on The First with Tim Shaw here at Celestial Oddities P.O.N.G. Have a great night and take care. Be safe.